Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that we can learn from their successes, pump up their own inspiration, and learn the motives behind the people that make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reece, and I don't have a co-host today, sadly, but in good news, Christian's baby was born healthy. Harper Rose Webb was born on Friday morning, so we're going to give him a little pass this time. Today, I'm accompanied by Scott Heslink with Rowboat, Dock and Dredge, and a whole plethora of other business experience. Scott, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Reece. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining. Today, it's Business Legends with Reece and Kaylee. There's no Christian.
And Kaylee's in the room. Thank you, Kaylee.
Yeah. She has to take stock of us and keep us in line and whatnot. So, for our listeners, why don't you tell us a little bit about Rowboat, Dock and Dredge, and then we'll get into
sure.
it.
So I purchased Rowboat, Dock and Dredge in March after about a year of due diligence and search. I was leaving the banking industry where I was, head of corporate real estate for Capital One, and prior to that was head of the branch networks for Wells Wachovia and in corporate strategy for Bank of America. So my background, is in engineering and project management.
Mm-hmm.
So going into the marine general contracting business was kind of a logical leap at this stage. At this stage in my life.
That I don't exactly believe you there, but why the business? I mean, was it just the opportunity, or were you interested in marine contracting?
So the business, after 27 years in corporate, I'd almost retired twice.
Wow.
Sometimes involuntarily.
I was gonna
is what I'll say.
I was about to ask you that, but I didn't want to be rude. It's the way it is in corporate life, though.
It's not rude. You turn 55, and I think things change rather rapidly. My position ended at Capital One. I took another job with Citigroup, and after 6 months in the middle of COVID in New York City, I said, I've had enough.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I had to decide, was I going to go back and be head of real estate for another big company, same thing, or was it time to go on my own? And, in looking at financials, et cetera, due to age, et cetera, you really can't start tapping into your 401s, your IRAs until about 67 and a half.
Right.
And
so you got about 10 years left before.
So I got about 10 years left. And so I decided, did I want to slog it out 10 years in the corporate world or 10 years, go on my own in an industry, that I have a background in, which was, commercial construction, project management.
Sure.
So in terms of transportable skills, that's what I was looking for. But I was also looking for something that I was passionate about. And I think the biggest surprise in taking on a commercial general contractor is, how needed the work is and how passionate the customers are.
Yeah.
We're connecting people back to the water.
Yeah.
Because a rowboat is about 50-50, depending on the year, commercial and residential. So we build custom docks, seawalls, put in riprap, all that kind of stuff. And then we also have a dredge business that makes the lakes and rivers around here deeper. There is a lot of need for that right now.
Sure.
I think the surprising thing is that I would say demand for our services outstrips supply by about 5x.
Wow.
If you look at our competitors, range from two guys in a truck to with a saw to 2 to 3 major competitors who are larger, insured, that type of stuff. So the range of services or the ability for customers to access those guys is tough.
Of course, yeah.
Right now, I think our competitors are quoting between 12 and 16 months.
Yeah.
To do a project. Yeah. So it's a lot about capacity. You hear about workforce. You hear about supply chain issues. We got them all.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an incredible model because you're talking about supply versus demand and so on and so forth, and it's amazing to be in an industry where, like you said, the demand exceeds the supply. There's a lot of business advantages to that, and then you're able to create a firm foundation with the business in doing what you want. I want to backtrack just a little bit.
Sure.
So you're in New York City, right? With
I was working remote.
Okay.
Out of Virginia with a Manhattan-based job. So I was in charge of
Gotcha.
corporate construction for North America for the retail bank.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll advance past the part where you say, okay, it's time to do my own thing. So you've made that entrepreneurial decision. You're into it. What did you do? What was your next step? So I always like to think that whenever you create a grand movement, it all begins with a series of tiny steps. So the first step is you decide you want to do your own thing. The second step might be like, what thing do I want to do, or something like that.
Yeah, and I think as a project manager, you have to think about it as a project.
Sure.
So, you start to think about, first of all, what am I passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
What would be fun? Mm-hmm. So I had to start to think about various industries.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? I know that you lived here for a while.
I did.
Did you? Had you made up your mind that you wanted to end up back here, or?
My wife made up my mind that I wanted to live back here.
That's a good woman. That's a good woman.
No, but we love Charlotte.
Yeah.
We had moved here in '99,
Mm-hmm.
and so we really liked the community. We really wanted to be here. So although we are open to other opportunities, we did focus on Charlotte.
Gotcha. Yep.
And so in terms of researching that, you can, as an entrepreneur, you can think about, hey, do I want to buy a franchise?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to start up something new? Do I have a
Right.
great idea?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to try to buy an existing business? And I'll just tell you, as I started researching franchises or startup, I think the greatest fear of entrepreneurs is being poor.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I wasn't up for 18 to 24 months of startup.
Sure.
And just pouring tons of money in. So the one thing that I decided is I wanted to buy an existing business.
Okay. So you're, if I can pause there. So you're basically, your wife has decided that you're going to be in Charlotte.
Yes.
I mean, that's basically the way it is. So the second thing is, that you have this great project management, construction, engineering. Even though you can't use headphones, that's an inside joke. But before the
Very nice.
before the engineering background, that you want to have an existing business, so something with cash flow with that. What else is that? Were those kind of the criterion before you started looking?
Yeah, that was the criteria, and then what I started to do is look at NAIC codes and and kind of studied the economy, and looked at what are the top growing businesses, what areas of the country are really experiencing growth
Sure.
and have future growth. And it may be a surprise if you start looking through those codes.
Yeah.
What's number one?
What's number one?
Marine construction is
Really?
the answer.
Okay.
It's the top. But I mean there are others. So that is fastest growing. Rivers and lakes are silting in.
Yeah, makes sense.
Especially with COVID, people are putting their money into recreation. They're staying home more.
Yeah.
So they're starting to look at their homes. And so I think home renovation businesses, deck building, those kinds of businesses are
really booming.
cranking.
Yeah.
So the next step was to say, okay, what's available? And so there's two things. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, if you're looking for an existing business, you go to Biz Buy Sell.
Sure.
You start contacting
Brokers
brokers, et cetera. So we took a little bit different path. So what we did, it's almost like pre-qualifying for a mortgage. We contacted a number of business brokers, went through their financial due diligence to look at, what, it's almost like, when you fill out an online mortgage thing, what can I afford?
Right.
It's almost like that. And so we decided to put a little bit of our own cash in, and that we were going to utilize a program, small business administration program called the ROBS program.
Okay.
Which is the rollover for business startup program. Entrepreneurs can set up a C Corp. It costs about $5,000 to enroll in ROBS. And what it allows you to do is take over your 401k. Basically, you're taking, portions, or, if you work for multiple companies, you probably have 3 or 4 of them.
Sure.
Where you tap into that, and the 401k transfers to you.
Yeah.
You are the owner of the 401k, and your investment is directly in your business.
Oh, wow.
So 100%.
Yeah.
So in that way, we're able to generate, the hundreds of thousands of dollars needed,
of course,
for a down payment, and then went through the small business administration portion. But back to the process, we applied and pre-qualified with a number of business brokers and became what's called like a premier or platinum candidate.
Sure.
You have to submit your resume. And
how many phone calls did you get in that amount of time, by the way?
You start getting. I was in the real estate business commercially, and what happens, brokers, once they find, a qualified client, you start to get deals that the general public won't get.
Sure.
You can go on Biz Buy Sell, or you can find brokers who are working with clients. They know what you're looking for, and they will start sending you prospectuses.
So it's almost like government work. You and I both do government work, so you're kind of on that no bid list where they're contacting you before it even lists.
They're contacting you. So if folks are looking at that path, Biz Buy Sell is great, but I think you want to see deals before they come to market.
Sure.
And in a lot of cases, what I found is the seller picks you.
Oh yeah.
Versus the other way around. In our case with Rowboat, there had been probably 5 or 6 offers,
especially with a positive cash flow business.
With a positive cash flow business that had been around since 1977.
Yeah.
The challenge is taking over a business like that is you and I have worked on what are we going to do to modernize this and make it more organized, because I think as you work with competition in that space, you run the gamut of, kind of dock handyman up to, professional companies.
Of course.
We need to be in the upper echelon of, highly organized, professional companies.
Yeah.
So if you take over a company that started in 1977.
Yeah.
What I think you and I have joked, we need to bring our systems up to the 90s.
Yeah.
and
there's a little bit of antiquation there for sure.
So we're trying to work through that. But the whole process of finding, it's really a lot of due diligence. I have friends who form these syndicates and search funders and hire people in Brazil and Thailand to just do hundreds of sourcings. I probably had to do 24.
Oh yeah.
But
I'm sure it was a nightmare filling out paperwork and stuff.
I think there's some luck involved. There's some serendipity of, are you the right person to run the right company, and is it the right time for the seller?
Absolutely, and it worked out for you so well too, because you ended up where you wanted to be. I mean, if you had the same opportunity in say Raleigh or something, which is still somewhat close, you may have not gone for it, or the seller may not have chosen you. Same thing.
I think that's true. You have to look at opportunity too, because there's the area around the lakes, Lake Norman, and we serve really from northern North Carolina really down to the coast. We've done projects in Hilton Head and Charleston and that kind of stuff. So our reach is a little bit bigger. Our market area is larger. Our competitors kind of focus on Lake Norman, or they focus on Lake Wiley.
Right.
And so there's a ton of, don't get me wrong, there's a ton of business there, but we want to have a grander scope.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about business antiquation, and it's so amazing. One of the things I was thinking about when you were speaking is we went to basically a customer appreciation party with a broker that we know very well, and you just meet people and all the different types of businesses that they're in and stuff, and it never ceases to amaze me what types of businesses exist. We met a gentleman, annual revenue $20 million per year, and all that he does is him and his son. All that he does, 100% of what he does. There's no nothing. 100% of what he does. He makes one part that goes on one pipe. That's it.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God. And that's not a business for me, but at the same time, it blows my mind what types of businesses can exist.
Right. And and the point there is you want to make sure that you don't become obsolete.
Right.
If that
what if that one part for the one pipe? Right. Exactly. That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
And so I was also looking for a business that had multiple lines. We can
you have the dock, the dredge, residential, commercial.
We can do repairs. We can do upgrades. I got 3 calls on the way here about I need a new roof.
Right.
I'm like, okay, we'll do that. We do shorelines. We do work off lake. We do dredging. So that's the other thing is if one sector goes up and the other goes down, I wanted to be able to, balance the work.
Have a little bit. It's like my dad says. He says about his stock portfolio. He always says diversify.
It's about beta risk.
Right.
If you're a stock guy.
Back to your banking terms. Speaking of banking terms, I wanted to touch on. Obviously, there's a huge difference in corporate world, and now you're in.
Oh boy.
All the lake things that you do and whatnot. So the first question I want to ask on that is, how did your experience in the banking realm in corporate America transfer over? I mean, what types of valuable things did you know from there to apply to here?
It's an interesting question that I think about all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So if you think about transportable skills, first is, if you always have a project management mindset, and a strategy mindset, that helps. I worked a lot with McKinsey and Deloitte and PwC, whoever,
Sure.
but I always think about, the 6 P's of business. Now you're going to ask me to remember them. Product, price, people, place, promotion, process.
Right.
And so that's what I've been trying to instill. I did it. Good. That's what I've been trying to instill. So, those good business basics help.
Sure.
I managed, teams, between 10 and 500 people, maybe up to 2,000 at sometimes. So managerial skills translate. However, there's a big difference between managing teams of MBAs and data scientists and managing, day-to-day construction crews. So but the managerial basics are the same. Treat people fairly, make sure that they have their direction, and stay the heck out of their way.
Man, what you just said, it's so funny because I was just having a meeting. You've met Austin. Austin's our awesome employee. He's a crazy person. But, we were talking about the wide difference of contracts that we have, different types of customers. Everything under the sun type of a thing. And even though there's a huge difference between, say, an attorney versus somebody that owns a restaurant, the thing is that concepts are always the same. So project management concepts are always the same.
Right.
You have a task, you have a goal, you have a deliverable, you have a due date. Marketing techniques and marketing language are always the same. People are just people at the end of the day. So I always think and I talk about that transportable skills factor.
I think there, for me, I sat on the other end of the table.
Sure.
So when I am negotiating with a municipality or with, a big commercial customer, I've been in their shoes. And so a lot of times I tell them that. I said, I know,
the game.
I know the game. Let's talk about, what's really needed here, and kind of I'm able to cut through, some of the BS at times.
Yeah.
And so that's been helpful.
I'm sure that helps.
The big difference is, if you're a manager of a group or, of a section of a number of groups like I was, you have other support. There's trouble, call the IT guy.
Right.
I need a report, call finance. There's an employee problem, let's call HR.
HR, sure.
So the big difference is, as CEO or president or owner or whatever you want to call it,
you're
you
all
have
those
to
things.
you're CMO, CFO,
right.
All in one.
All in one.
And I think it's about assembling that great team. I've hired you guys to really help me with
marketing. You have.
well, okay.
Yeah.
I've hired you guys to help me with marketing strategy. So you're kind of the fractional CMO of the company. I have a fractional CFO. I'm doing a lot of the HR stuff myself because I can. And then the company came with stable employees who had been there. There are people there who've been there 25 and 30 years.
Yeah. How is out of curiosity, by the way, hang on, let me tell you this first. This is going to horrify you right here. I am our HR for our company.
I trust you.
That's why, it's so funny because from a managerial standpoint, I always take that round table approach type of a thing. Like I always want, and Kaylee can attest to this, I always want people to be comfortable bringing things. And I was just having a conversation this morning with an employee of ours about something personal going on in their life. And, but I want to be that person. I want my door to be open for that type of thing. So it's interesting how we were talking about transmutable skills and transportable skills. Like, I think that's always relevant to
Well,
everyone.
I mean, I've always operated on the philosophy. I've always told the people I work with is I can't resolve what you won't raise.
Right.
So if if you're keeping something to yourself,
Yeah.
there's not much I can do for you.
Yeah, I always say blind spots. So it's like I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
And actually, I'll give you a great example. This 6 months ago, there was an issue. It wasn't anything major or anything, but I was completely unaware of it because it's not in my inbox, and I'm not going to go in my employees' emails and micromanage them and look through every email they're sending or whatever.
Right.
And they came to me and they're like, "Oh yeah, well there was this issue," and I was like, "You're on your own, buddy. Like I can't help you with that." So
Well,
it's like you said, you got to raise it.
The thing that the bonus with this company, it came with great employees.
Sure.
And so I am very lucky to get to work with these guys because, with that philosophy of I can't fix what you don't tell me about, it also, kind of goes both ways because I'm making
Absolutely.
I'm making changes too, and I have to be able to explain to them why we're doing things, why we're modernizing. The managerial philosophy of the company now it's a bit different. I rely on these guys. They have a lot of responsibility, and I trust them to do it, and they're awfully damn good.
What was the I'll call it the transition process. So after the paper was inked, so to speak. First off, I'll say it seems like, at least from my external perspective, that you got along with the team immediately. Like it seemed like everybody just got along pretty much as soon as you walked in.
I think when you work for somebody for 30 years and somebody new comes in,
it can be frightening. It can be exciting sometimes.
Yeah, well, we threw a little bit of money at them.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a good strategy for sure.
So, I mean, that's one thing. But I think hopefully, we've built up some trust and credibility. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. Might not be as fast as people would like.
Sure.
But we have a lot of different ideas. And keep in mind, if you've worked somewhere 20 years, 30 years, you care a lot about,
of course,
about the company and about your coworkers. And so
I was going to say that, as we've had discussions about modernizing with your team and stuff, some of the things, something that I'll say is really great about your team is that it doesn't seem like you're ruffling feathers or creating friction. They're like, yeah, we want to do this. Like they're on board with it.
I think what I would say is I think they were fully aware that there were some things we could do better.
Yeah.
And had
some things you needed. Yeah.
Well, and in many cases they had been asking for it. But,
oh yeah, sure.
But if you're selling your company, how much
of that do you want to do?
How much investment do you want to do? You're trying to sell your company, so you don't want to make investments. So we've been making a lot of investments, in equipment and upgrading, salaries and benefits and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So and more to come. I need to do way more than I've done, but
one step at a time. Though.
Yeah, one step at a time. First 7 months has been about trying to bring in enough business and trying to satisfy the customers. That is probably my biggest concern. My old customers used to be, regional bank presidents. We built 66 Capital One cafes, and that was the president's pet project.
Yeah.
So I'd have to negotiate with her, or the regional people who sometimes wanted different things, and they could be very, very, very demanding.
Of course.
And so we're finding that as well. But it's different if you're building a custom dock. It's your dock.
Yeah.
So I'm used to challenges, but my biggest concern is being able to get to everybody fast enough with the capacity that we have.
Absolutely, and fulfilling on what you're saying. You brought up a great point because when you were in I keep saying corporate America, but we'll say Bank America.
I was in corporate America.
Yeah.
Well, it's the
Bank
funny
America,
thing is
whatever.
if you run an operations group, at the bank, you're not really a banker. You're really running an operation.
Like an internal operation team or something.
It's not really that different than the work I did at Hewlett Packard. It's just the industry was different.
Right.
So
what would you say, or if you think there are any differences, what would you say is the differences between the B2B system that you were accustomed to for so long versus now you're very much not the commercial side. I know you do commercial stuff too, but like B2C, you're building somebody's dock.
What I would say, and to be honest with you, that is some of the most fun about the job. We,
Sure.
we get to work for race car drivers. We
Yeah,
get to work
meet all
for
kinds of cool people.
corporate executives. Yeah, we get to meet all kinds of really cool people in the area, and so the difference there is, sometimes you're dealing with people's personal issues. Like
Yeah.
there's an estate. I'm a widow. I don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so the human side comes way more into play
Sure.
than it would in corporate America. I didn't feel sorry for many of the regional bank
I was going to
presidents.
say, do you think that makes it more difficult, or it just adds a different
Well, no,
flavor to it?
listen, it gives you some flexibility in how you do things.
Sure.
And that's what's great about it is, we can look at various options, to serve people. We can look at value engineering, and give people options.
Sure.
Because I think, the other day I told you I was buying a car, and the cars right now are hard to buy.
They are.
And
Especially get what you want.
Yeah, the dealers are like, take it or leave it.
Right. They don't
I-
care.
I
That's that demand supply thing
Yeah.
once again,
And so I am really against the take it or leave it attitude.
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
with
The hard sell.
So we have competitors who will say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know some of them.
We don't.
Yeah.
But hey, that's a business philosophy.
It is.
If that's, and they can be successful in that, in that manner.
Yeah.
So we try to be a little bit more flexible. I think, difference. I don't have any regulators looking over my shoulder except
Right.
for permitting authorities who were following their rules and their direction. But I don't have to go answer to the OCC
Yeah.
on issues.
That part's got to be really nice.
It is nice. But the folks we deal with, the counties and Duke Lake Services, really good to work with. And those guys, they're impressive too, because they will bring options or bring up things that we haven't thought about, even though we do it every day.
Yeah.
And so we rely on those partnerships heavily, and things have gone well.
A couple podcasts ago, we had my good friend Eric Powell on Artisan Signs and Graphics, and he's
I'm trying to get some new signs from
yeah
them.
yeah
They're good guys.
They are incredible. Actually, he just called me beforehand, and we're doing a thing together soon. But Eric's a great guy. But one thing about Eric is that, and he'll tell you this. It's on the show too, so it's in the ethers. But for him, his number one business skill, right, is relationships. That's it. Like that's his whole secret. He says it's all about relationships. And as you were talking about some of these permitting authorities and whatever else, doesn't it make such a huge difference when you have people that care about their work, that care about the safety of people on their docks and whatever else? And it's just kind of amazing what you said, because they have a circumstance where they may recommend something to you, but it's not like, oh, you gotta do this and putting red tape on you. It's more like this is something you can do to help people.
Yeah. Well, and there's another thing that's great about small business is, for the most part, people want you to succeed.
Right.
I
For sure.
had a call the other day from a customer. He said, you've been on that corner since the 70s. I want to do business with you guys. It's really great to see kind of new life being breathed into the business. We want you to be around.
Right.
And so it's kind of cool. There have been people who have really tried to support us.
Right.
I mean, which is
that's the goodwill principle of business.
I don't think people call up and go, we really want
Yeah, we really want you. We really want you to crash and burn. We hate you.
We really want so. Yeah, the hard part is really, can we get to people quickly enough? And they're a little agitated because they'll call they'll call everybody and nobody calls them back.
Yeah. And
so we're working on systems, as to be able to manage that demand. Because right now we have there are 280 customers in queue.
Wow.
In one form or another. And some of them are thinking about it. Some of them are in design. Some are in permit. Some are in production. And keeping all that straight with limited capacity of crews is also is also difficult.
Oh yeah, I mean there's your project management. I always talk about the cycle of business. The cycle of business. Right now, your demand exceeds your supply by your own admission. Eventually, supply will exceed demand. It's just the cycle of business. Now, hopefully, that doesn't happen because you're in a more competitive place.
You would think with the state of the stock market, interest rates, but the other side of that is people are home more often.
Right.
They care more about their property. Also, climate change, et cetera, water levels are changing.
Yep.
So, we have lots of people who
lots of factors contributing to demand.
Lots of people who, they can't get their boat in or out, or they need a new boat ramp because their boat ramp isn't long enough. So there's, right now things are good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're as good as they've ever been. We have, huge queues of business and people calling every day. The question is, can we get to them in the timing that we need?
Yeah.
So there are regulations. It'll take 6-8 weeks to get a permit. We try to be ahead of that and try to keep that cycle going so that we are producing the ones that have their permits while we're waiting for the next ones.
Right.
In the middle of those, we try to do get off to the repair customers. That's the hard part, I think, is small jobs versus big jobs, and you do have to think about
what weighs
return.
more, what's more profitable.
Well, what's the opportunity cost?
Yeah.
Right. So
you do one job for a tenth the value, might take the same amount of time. It doesn't make very much sense. So
but that doesn't mean you can't try. We try to keep people in queue.
Yeah.
I always say, how's the deli line today? Now serving number 20.
Right.
And people, I think folks are fairly understanding of that because,
of course,
especially since it's hard for them to even get
a call back.
Call back.
Yeah. And
so that bothers me. I don't want to be those guys.
Yeah. I think I told you that I just got my shortly before I met you, I got my deck replaced.
Right.
And getting my deck replaced was nightmare fuel. I mean, I contacted 5 different contractors. Some wouldn't even call me back. Some wouldn't even give me an estimate on the job. I mean, it was just, and it's because of that demand feature that some didn't want the job.
You should have sold them Salesforce.
I should have for sure. Well, I think that wraps up all the time we have for today. I'm sure we could continue on this conversation for another hour and a half. I always like to ask somebody. I try to ask a little funny question or a little snippet before the end of our shows. The question I want to ask you, given your very colorful background, what advice would you give somebody that was trying to leave a corporate position and take on an entrepreneurial spirit?
Here's the thing. Have courage.
Yeah.
And be persistent. It took me almost a year to buy this company. So what I would say, you'll find a lot of people who say, oh man, think about it. I was, an executive vice president making
good money.
Good money. Well, and so whether I was great or sucked, I still got paid the same.
Right.
Here, it's about
very much performance based.
And what I would say is have courage, because I think that's really at the end of the day what it takes is, are you willing to take that risk? The benefits of owning your own shop far exceed any safety that you might feel in getting a
dependable paycheck.
Getting a dependable paycheck. Well, and keep in mind, I have a dependable paycheck.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
But not a lot of mid-level managers at Bank of America have their own plane.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the other thing. There is risk, but the rewards, both personally and financially, are they exceed looking over your shoulder for the next 10 years.
Absolutely. Christian always jokes. I'll tell you his joke in his stead since he's absent today. But he always says, Reece, you're really good at what you do, but you are the least employable individual I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? He's like, you just don't listen to anybody. I'm like, well, yeah. So that's kind of what it all came down to for me.
That's very rude.
Yeah.
Like I said, I talk to a lot of people. We joke, we call ourselves pirates.
Right.
And I'm always like, I'm in the pirate business.
Even when you post, you put a pirate flag. It's awesome.
I do.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. But the thing is, I can't tell you how many friends, colleagues have said, geez, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I'm like, so What are you waiting for?
Yeah, what are you waiting for?
I waited 20 years too long to do this because I was very happy to get my check, my bonus, and my stock options every year.
They buy your complacency sometimes, you know.
And then all of a sudden it's over.
Yep.
And is that where you want to be?
Right.
It's tough for older individuals to find, you know, those very, very high paying jobs. You can do it, but it becomes somewhat of a gerbil wheel. And that's why I always say to me, well, what are you jealous of? You know, I'm up at 6:30 every morning, working 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Yes, it's worth it. But if that's what you want to do, go for it. That's what I would say.
Man, that's great advice. Scott, thank you so much for joining
you.
me this morning. We're going to give Christian a pass today.
Yeah, Christian,
Yeah.
whatever.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yep.